So I've been working with expats and their US taxes for almost 15 years now. And in this video, I want to finally put to rest the most common question that I get from expats every single day. Specifically for digital nomads, I get the question all the time, do I qualify for the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion as a digital nomad? You know, people that aren't actually establishing residency outside the US. I'm gonna talk you through exactly the process that I go through to qualify people for the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion and not, so that you know exactly what you need to do to ensure that you will qualify for the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion, and you'll be able to defend that position if the IRS were to question you, audit you, send you a letter. My name's Alex McGowan with McGowan Tax, where we provide practical international tax solutions to small businesses and individuals. So digital nomads have kind of changed the game with the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion to a certain extent. In the past, it was all very simple, or at least more simple, where it was really just a day test, right? I mean, to move outside the US, you were generally moving because of a job or you were retiring, and it was very clear that what your intention was. Since the game kind of changed because people were able to, much more than before, work remotely. So you may still keep a US employment job and be able to live outside the US. I get those type of people all the time. Or you're working just from your computer, self-employed, like me. You know, I do everything from my computer. I don't technically need to be in the US necessarily. So it'd be very easy for me to go abroad. The game has changed a little bit into how you qualify for that Foreign Earned Income Exclusion. So in this video, we're gonna walk through these rules, and specifically the way that I walk clients through qualification for the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion, so that you'll know how to qualify, what are the traps that I may run into where the IRS may deny my exclusion, and really just to make sure that you can qualify for this great exclusion, save $20,000 or so a year, and not have problems with the IRS. If you're liking this video, you should really check out my newsletter, where I put out different tips and tricks, latest law changes that can really help you save money and save complexity if you're living or investing abroad. Just think how much you could save with the right tax advice. So the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion, the basic definition in order to qualify for it is that you have to have a tax home outside the US for the entire qualifying period and qualify for either the bona fide residence test or the physical presence test. Now, most people are familiar with the physical presence test, which means you can only spend 35 days in the US during the qualified period, or said differently, you have to spend 330 days of a 365-day period outside the US. So most people jump straight to that rule, and they call me and they say, hey, I'm packing up tomorrow, selling my house. I have nothing left in the US. I'm moving to Portugal and I'm going to be there for several years. I don't know where I'm going to be, you know, on any given month. I may be bouncing around, but I'm definitely not coming back to the US anytime soon. So they just assume they're going to meet that 330-day test, and now they've qualified for the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion. That's not necessarily true because of the tax home test, and that's where most people get off to the wrong foot or don't qualify at all before you even get to the physical presence test. So a tax home is defined as where you physically do business. So where is your principal place of business? So this refers back to section 162 of the tax code, which tells people when they can deduct travel expenses, because to deduct travel expenses, you have to be away from your tax home. So section 162 defines tax home. So section 911, which is your Foreign Earned Income Exclusion section, refers back to that section 162, and it defines your tax home. Basically, I think about it in two steps. First, you have to have an intention to move or be leaving from your current place of work for more than 1 year. So you have to intend to be outside of your current place of work for more than 1 year and actually do that. So let's say you're employed and you're living in California and you've been working out of your house for a few years, and all of a sudden you say, you know what, I don't want to live here anymore. I'm going to move abroad and bounce around to different places. Well, your tax home was at your home in California in that scenario. So in order to meet this first test, you have to intend to be away from that tax home for more than a year. So now your tax home is shifted to the foreign jurisdiction potentially, but that first part is important. We have to make sure you've shifted your tax home. So the next step is, where did you shift it to? So you have to have that tax home outside the US. And that's where you have to trigger this new place of business. And that's the part that's a little bit hard, maybe very hard, hard to, I guess, put a specific rule on. When have you now triggered a new regular place of business? And there's no specific rule for that. If you're moving on a given week or monthly basis, in my opinion, and based on the case law, it's going to be very hard for you to establish a permanent place of business in another country. So now you're bouncing around to different places. So maybe you haven't established a trader business or a tax home. The IRS has a term for that. It's called an itinerant worker. And in that case, that means that your tax home is wherever you are on a given day. So again, in this scenario, we're assuming that this person has not established a tax home anywhere because they're not settling down anywhere. They're bouncing from place to place, maybe Airbnbs, renting short-term rentals. So they're not really settling down anywhere. So now they're an itinerant worker. Their tax home is outside the US if that's where they're working on any given day. So in that case, we can still qualify for the foreign earned income exclusion. I've had a lot of people tell me if you're an itinerant worker, you can't qualify. That's simply not true. But it does make it more complicated because since your tax home follows you wherever you are, if you come back to the US even for one day, now your tax home has shifted to the US for one day, and back to that original rule, you have to have a tax home outside the US for the whole period. So even if you met that 330-day requirement, your tax home came back to the US with you. So if you're an itinerant worker, my opinion is you have to stay outside of the US if you haven't established a tax home in a specific place outside the US. So we'll talk about my recommendation a little bit more, but you're in a much better position, especially if you're planning on spending a little time back in the US visiting family, or maybe your business requires it, a couple weeks out of the year, is to find a home base outside the US that you can call where your new tax home is, and you can travel from there. But maybe that's a long-term lease, 6-month lease. There's no bright line test, but establishing this place, maybe you get a gym membership there, join a church, a membership organization, whatever is going to tie you to that place a little bit more specifically than bouncing around Airbnb, can really help you. So now you're not an itinerant worker and your tax home's in this new place, and now you're back to the 330-day rule, which is easier to manage. So that's basically the itinerant worker and the tax home test. But an important caveat or additional layer to the tax home test that the IRS requires is that you do not have an abode in the US. So that's kind of the yin to the yang of the tax home test. Tax home test is where you're doing business. The abode test is where you live. So this is the domestic part of your life. So, the classic example is someone that moves their tax home outside the US, but maybe their family's still in the US, their kids are going to school in the US. Their domestic world is still in the US. That's what we have to change. And that's where most of the case law is when you get into the case law of this and the people that have failed the foreign earned income exclusion. It's because they didn't get their abode out of the US. So it's very important when you move outside the US and you're going to claim the foreign earned income exclusion, the tax home's got to be outside the US, and we have to break enough ties with the US to where it's no longer your abode. So that could be simply renting out your house, even if you got a driver's license somewhere else or in a different state, just in a different location, getting gym memberships and just personal things where if you took all the facts of your life in the US and your life outside the US, where would it look like you actually live at the end of the day? And I always help my clients. I have a checklist that I put together to help clients build a case for the abode being outside the US. And just to be clear, you don't have to prove that your abode in a specific place outside the US, kind of like you do with the tax home test. You have to prove that it's not in the US. What I'm doing for my clients to document and support this foreign earned income exclusion position is we're getting enough things outside of the US so that the IRS could not argue an abode. And the big one is just a home, right? If you don't have a home available to you in the US and you do outside the US, it'd be very hard to argue you have an abode there if you can't actually live there, right? So that's just an example of that. But this is the main point when you're dealing with a digital nomad scenario, is you definitely can qualify for the foreign earned income exclusion. I have a lot of people that come to me saying they don't qualify, or maybe they just assume they do. So you definitely can qualify, but you have to go through these different hoops to ensure that you have a supportable documented position. And that's what I help my clients with, to make sure that we support the tax home position, whether it's itinerant or not, and we support the abode outside the US position. And then once we have those, all we have to do is either meet the bona fide residence test, which is a full calendar year, or that 330-day test. And the foreign earned income exclusion is extremely powerful in that case because it just exempts exempted you from income tax on up to $130,000 of your earned income for the 2025 tax year at least. That's easily $20,000 in taxes depending on your tax rate. So it's an extremely important thing that you do right on the front end to make sure you qualify for that exemption. If you're a digital nomad and you have questions and you've been searching for answers online about whether you qualify for the foreign earned income exclusion, feel free to reach out to me. I have a free checklist I'll provide you that you can kind of go through to see specifically with this Abode or tax home test to see where you land on it. And of course, you can reach out to us for a consultation and we can talk through it and make sure that you're supporting your position correctly and that you can qualify for the foreign earned income exclusion without IRS problems. Thanks for watching the video. Reach out to us if you have questions on your international tax issues.